Hello and welcome to the Engineer Exchange, a podcast where we share experiences, insights and knowledge from experts in the industry.
For this podcast, we're celebrating National Careers Week. We'll be chatting to our guests all about civil engineering careers, advice for young people and what the future holds for our industry.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Hayley.
And we are your podcast hosts from Waterman Aspen. Today we are joined by four fantastic people in our organisation. Everyone has different experiences and knowledge about civil engineering, so we're going to let them introduce themselves. So we'll start with you, Esther, if that's okay.
Yep, sure. So my name's Esther Lawton. I'm the Regional Director for the South West and South Wales in Waterman Aspen.
So we'll go around this way.
Hi, my name's Simon Hassan. I'm National Training Manager for Waterman Aspen.
Hi, I'm Jack Graham and I'm a traffic engineer in the Waterman Aspen North East Division.
Yeah, I'm Liam Simpson. I'm also part of Waterman Aspen North East and I'm an Assistant Structures Engineer.
Okay, thank you. So, first question, big question. What is civil engineering? Simon?
Civil engineering, gosh, there's a few definitions out there, I suppose, but it's a profession that exists to sort of design, create, inspect, maintain, service, demolish, reuse all parts of infrastructure around you, I would say. That's how I would define civil engineering for the benefit of humankind, I suppose. And it's constantly evolving, but it's just that looking at the planet, the needs of the planet and designing the infrastructure, putting it in place for the benefit of everyone, really. That's roughly how I would define civil engineering, I think.
Anyone got anything to add?
Yeah, I think to add to that, I remember doing a talk to some sort of year 8, year 9 students, and I literally described it as everything from as soon as you get out of bed, the water that you brush your teeth with, all the way through to the car that your parents drop you off at school at, maybe the bus, all that is affected by civil engineering. And I think it's sort of everything that you touch on a daily basis literally involves civil engineering. And I think it's all encompassing. And I think to add to what you say, I think it's about sort of driving infrastructure forward and making people's lives easier where possible.
That's a really good way of describing it.
Yeah, it is. I didn't know what civil engineering was until I joined Waterman Aspen because my background's in marketing, so I had no way. I didn't know how much it encompassed. I didn't know what it covered or anything. So, I feel like I've learnt a lot about it since.
It's all around you. It's the infrastructure around you, and the design and evolution of it. Basically, that's another way to look at it, I suppose. Yeah.
So civil engineering, we know it's super broad, as we've mentioned. What subjects, sort of at school or university, can lead to a career in civil engineering? Because if it is so broad, are there any specific subjects that you think can lead to a career in civil engineering? We'll start with you, Liam, if that's okay.
Yeah, so maths and science are kind of the obvious ones, but I think some of the ones that are overlooked at school sometimes, ones that I took part in, are kind of product design or anything of a technical and vocational. Because a lot of civil engineering especially is to do with logic and logical thinking. So I think anything that kind of renounces those tools in young people is definitely worthwhile taking.
Yeah, definitely sort of analytical minds, anything that sort of gets you thinking about problem solving, things like that, the STEM subjects.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I know sometimes at schools now they do CAD drawings and things, so if somebody's got a particular interest in that as well, that would lend itself to civil engineering.
And do they use the softwares at schools as well?
Yeah, they've started to.
Really
Yeah. So some of the
that's perfect,
schools that we go to.
Yeah. About 15 years ago in between there when I was at school last, and there was nothing like that getting done. I didn't even know what civil engineering was until after I'd left school. Yeah, so I had no clue. So things like that in school is going to make a massive difference for the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the maths and sciences are an obvious one, definitely. I mean, they're going to pop their head up at some point in along the line at GCSE and A-level. I don't think you can avoid that, and it's almost dictated by what the universities are looking for in terms of entry, in terms of subjects. But it can be mixed up a little bit with, geography, computing. All of that is in there as well. It's it's being analytical, having a bit of a logical brain, but a bit of flair as well. There's many skills that make up people that work in the civil engineering profession. Yeah, but inevitably, one of the subjects that you study at A-level is going to be a maths or a sciencey one, almost certainly, without a doubt. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What about sort of other skills that make for a good civil engineer? Like, do any of you have any sort of hobbies or personal interests or other experiences that have helped you become better sort of in your career?
Yeah, so I think one that I like sort of think is quite underrated is like doing sport as a child. The reason I say that is obviously engineering can be quite stressful, and there's often a lot of times you go on a site, for example, and things will have just gone horribly wrong. And I think doing sport as a child and sort of having experiences where you've been knocked back and had to sort of think on your feet, or maybe sort of, I don't know, even if you're doing sort of competitive sport and dealing with sort of knockbacks and stuff like that, I think that actually is really beneficial in your career. And I think being able to sort of handle stuff under pressure. I mean, I did a lot of rock climbing as a child, and like being able to handle sort of high pressure situations and still sort of think logically and sort of act as normal in those situations, I think like really can help with your career. And I think that's often overlooked. And I think sometimes it's like easy just to sort of melt down and sort of just go into full panic stations. But I think having that ability to sort of just stay cool, stay calm, and sort of just crack on with the task at hand, I think it's like really valuable. And I think that's often seen in like really good leaders and engineers.
I twin all of that with really good personal and social and communication skills as well. I mean, however you do it, verbally, graphically, and dealing with a wide range of people as well, not just your fellow engineers and technicians in the design office or site or wherever you may be, but a whole raft of stakeholders, you know, politicians, the local people. You've got to have those good personal and communication skills, which is quite often lacking
I agree
with civil engineers. And it's just developing those public speaking skills as well.
Yeah, like I think in my career, obviously I'm not necessarily like a civil engineer, but I studied drama when I was at GCSE and A-level, and it really helped me.
Yeah.
And I did performing arts when I was a kid. And even though, you know, I don't do any of that now, but it's really helped me build my confidence with speaking to people, and like and not being afraid to like use your voice and put your ideas across. I think that's like ideas sharing and not being afraid to use your voice.
Yeah,
that's helped me a lot.
Yeah, good debating skills as well. We did a bit of that at secondary school, but degree-wise, I don't think it was really touched on communication and debating skills, and it should be there, really.
Yeah. Resilience is one as well. I know like in primary schools now, they do a lot of work on like getting back up again and retrying, resilience. I'm not able to do it yet, but I can do it if I keep trying, and I'll be able to do it in the future. I think that's really important to teach kids now, because you're always going to fail, and it's how you deal with that, isn't it? And you get back up and try again. And I think resilience is a big one, no matter what industry you're in, really.
Yeah, and I think with engineering, it's making things work as well. So, you know, architects might design all these great ideas, but practically it wouldn't work in the normal world. So engineers have got to find a way to sort of apply that and make it happen. And it might not be as it is on the drawing. So, yeah, you've got to think on your feet, really.
Yeah.
And,
I can imagine, like, as engineers, you must fail all the time with things that don't work, and then you have to...
It's definitely an process.
Not too catastrophically. Having an eye for detail, but also looking at things holistically. And taking into account many other things with your great personal and comm skills. You know, you're thinking commercially, you're thinking health, safety and welfare, you're looking at it technically as well. It all comes into play eventually. So all of these things are really important.
Yeah, I think developing like the ability to know where to focus your energy as well, with attention to detail. So it's understanding on a task, and this is something I learned when I studied computing science at sixth form, knowing where to sort of outsource parts of your work. So sort of when to Google things, and then when to actually really like sort of throw yourself at a task and focus on that attention to detail. And I think to touch on the sort of failing aspect as well, I think as long as you're sort of failing forwards, I think a lot of the things that I see often with sort of older engineers who are maybe sort of stuck in their ways a little bit is there's this sort of logic of, well, as long as you just keep failing and sort of bashing your head against the wall, you'll eventually get there. But I think having that approach of, all right, going back to the drawing board, I've failed, how can I improve on that? I think it's like super valuable. Because I think otherwise you just sort of burn out and get sick and sort of look for another job or another career. Yeah. Because I think, as you're saying, it is, you do see failure a lot, and you do have to sort of have that sort of solutions orientated mindset rather than trying to sort of pick apart the issue that you're seeing.
Yeah, with tenacity as well.
Yeah.
What subjects did you both study in school?
I didn't go to sixth form or anything.
Oh, wow.
No, so I came a different way. I started on a trade apprenticeship. So I was a plater and welder to begin with, and then I transitioned later and done a HNC at level 3. HNC at level 4, and then currently sitting my degree. So I haven't got A levels at all.
Wow.
What about you, Jack?
Yeah, so I actually went to sixth form for like 22 months out of the 24 months I was meant to be there. And I did really well in my GCSEs without really doing that much revision, which sort of obviously isn't it sort of was great at the time, but going forward it wasn't really great because I thought I'd just do the same in sixth form.
Didn't know the knowledge that you needed.
Yeah, exactly. So I hadn't sort of ingrained this like idea to revise and things at this point. And so I studied like maths, physics, chemistry and computing science at sixth form, and then just saw an apprenticeship for a level 3, like sort of 2 months before my exams, and sort of used it as a bit of a get-out clause. I was like, oh, I don't really have to revise. It was quite lazy really, but those subjects would like give us a fantastic foundation. So I found the level 3 really easy. And I do know like a lot of the apprentices that I see now have A levels, and it's so much easier because you can just skip that entire level 3 and just get straight on the degree apprenticeship. So I think like if I could go back in time, I'd probably try and argue the toss and say, look, can I just stay at sixth form for another 2 months before my apprenticeship?
Right.
But yeah, so I think those subjects definitely helped though going forward, because I wasn't entirely sure on whether I wanted to be a civil engineer. In fact, I actually wanted to be like a naval engineer originally, sort of working at sea, and then I realised I got seasick on a holiday, so I sort of
Probably not.
it was quite problematic. I thought this probably isn't a great idea. So then like sort of looked for other engineering stuff and sort of just fell into civil engineering. But I think all the skills that I'd learned at sixth form and sort of in my personal life definitely like helped with that, and sort of made moving to engineering a lot easier than I think if I'd studied other things.
I think that's interesting though, because I think when I was in school, civil engineering in general was perceived as quite you had to be a really, really high achiever at your GCSEs, at your A levels, and you had to do a degree. Like, I feel like it's good to know for people who are watching and for young people that there's lots of different routes, and it seems like a accessible sort of area to go into. So if you don't need A levels, there are other routes if A levels aren't for you. So. That's interesting.
That's definitely what I want to get across to people, because there's not many people that have done it the kind of way I've done it, but it's similar. In school, engineering seemed off the cards for me because I thought you need to be top of the class, top 1% to do anything in it. But it's not like that, and there's plenty of jobs, and it's much more accessible than what it's made out to seem when you're in academics, especially at a young age.
I mean, just from this stat here, since 2017, the number of level 6 apprenticeships started in the UK has increased by 134%. So, obviously, the discussion here is university or apprenticeships. Is one better than the other? And what are the pros and cons of each? What do you think, Simon?
Is one better than the other? It depends on personal circumstances, I think, and it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, when I started my A levels, it was 1990 to 1992, so apprenticeships just weren't on the scene. So everyone was just sort of funneled down the A level full-time university route. But then again, it was free, and you didn't have to pay it back. So there were loans only just starting to come in towards the end. Which way is better? I don't know really. It's personal choice. One of the pros of doing an apprenticeship, of course, is it's funded by the apprenticeship levy, by the taxes that company pays now. So if you've got the drive and the willingness, and you get yourself on an apprenticeship, you've got to go through an interview process, and you stick with it, you can get yourself a degree or HNC or whatever, an attached professional qualification, and it won't cost you a thing. Okay, what is the con of that? You do hear people say and suggest from time to time that they've missed out on the university of life and all the partying, etc., that goes with that. But then there are ways around that too. If I was going to go to university full time, what are the pros of that? Well, I'm not quite sure anymore these days, to be honest with you.
Not anymore, no. I mean, I went to university full time, and again, I went to university over 20 years ago, so apprenticeships weren't really a big thing. Certainly not for the subjects that I was wanting to study. But yeah, like if I actually think about what did I learn at university, apart from a lot of life skills that I use in my day-to-day job now, the things I learned, not that many really. I'm sure I could have learnt them on other courses. So it is. I enjoyed being at uni, and I wouldn't have not gone. But I think there's a lot more options now for people, and it's not always the only option, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I enjoyed university as well, but but I say it was free at the time. I didn't have to pay anything back. If you go away to university and do a full-time degree these days, you could argue that it's the break from home, and you learn to set yourself up on your own, experience life in another part of the country. But you can do that with an apprenticeship too. too, and you don't come out with all the debt.
Yeah.
One of the you could also argue that going to university full time could be the way forward if an apprenticeship is not available in that particular course subject area that you're very interested in. But apprenticeships are expanding slowly. So, and again, it's a bit of personal choice there and life sitch too. So you got to take things on balance. But apprenticeships certainly are a very, very, very good way to get yourself academically qualified in civil engineering, twinned with a professional qualification at the end of it too.
It's definitely an attractive option, isn't it?
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think if it had been free, I think I probably would have gone to university full time. But I think financially, the burden that you're left with is absolutely incredible. And I think like following the government policy that changed recently about the fact that you don't finish ever paying your student loan until it's cleared. So it used to clear, I think it's 60
after
or
30 years.
I think it was retirement or
yeah, it was a retirement or something like that. Whereas now for university starters, I believe from this year onwards, they'll be paying it until they expire as such.
Die.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Which is pretty concerning, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that would definitely have put me off. And I think if you're maybe not entirely sure on who you are as a person or maybe what career you want to get into, I think it allows you to choose something that's maybe a bit more broad. Like I know friends who've done like geography degrees who now work as engineers, and they did the geography degree because it was something they're interested in and it sort of opened doors after university. But I think if you're relatively sure on what you want to do, and I think not to confuse that with being pigeonholed into the career that you choose the apprenticeship in, but I think if you've got a rough idea of, okay, I want to be an engineer or I want to do X or Y, I think an apprenticeship has very few disadvantages because with moving out, you've got a salary. So you could rent somewhere or move to do your apprenticeship. And as Simon said, you haven't got that debt that's sort of hanging over your head. And you have the flexibility. You could go to a new employer, you could change your career, and you haven't got that sort of 4-year lock-in or 3-year lock-in of a degree. And I think especially when you look, there's now medical degrees that have literally been released a few weeks ago for doctors. I think that's definitely something that'll sort of become more prevalent as we obviously go into sort of cost of living crisis. I think people just can't afford to go to university, and I think the university life that people used to have isn't really attainable financially.
Yeah, I heard about the apprenticeships for medical students. They're going to trial that. That's an interesting one. I didn't know the government had shifted the goalposts again with repaying fees. I know they upped the repayment period from 30 to 40 years, but that's now up again until you're dead, basically.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so that's an interesting one.
That's a lot, isn't it? It's a big burden to come out of university with as a young person, 21, 22 years old, with that massive burden of you for the rest of your life.
Career then, aren't you? So, and like you say, to have that hanging over you.
Yeah. It's a bit of a graduate contribution, isn't it, I suppose? And there's nothing to stop them upping the minimum payment for over time too.
They change the rules all the time, so
You could argue that doing an apprenticeship is a bit of a solo mission.
Yeah,
and that you don't go to university, you're not surrounded by loads of your peers, all in the same sort of boat, doing the same thing in halls of residence constantly. It can be a little bit of solo job, but so if you've got the mindset for that, then it's and they're competitive to get onto apprenticeships. You can't just waltz onto them. You've got to apply, you've got to be interviewed, you've got to be accepted. There's a bit of trust and faith both ways, but so it could be a bit of a tougher mission, but there are many advantages, I think.
I think as well as an employer, because people doing the apprenticeships are getting that practical experience, that is so invaluable because although at university you're getting that academic knowledge, it's in the working world, it's often translates very differently. So I've heard a lot of university graduates sort of say, it's so different in the real world to what sort of...
You're told when you're because I did a full-time degree at university as well. And you're told, oh, you're amazing, you've got this degree. Oh, you've got a first-class honours degree, amazing. So you think you're going to be able to waltz in and get a job because you're told how great you are. And it's an amazing achievement. It's not to like diminish anyone who does go down the full-time university route because it is, I wouldn't change my experience either. But it's definitely extremely humbling when you come out of university and you're applying for very, sort of basic admin roles just to try and get a bit of money. And they're like, well, you don't have any work experience, so...
Yeah. And that is such a good thing with the apprenticeship, you're getting that hands-on experience straight away. And then, you've got your career ahead of you. I think you become even more attractive to employers. I really do like the way that the apprenticeship is set up. struggle to find too many cons with
It's
it.
almost, I think, impossible to find any flaws with it, really.
Yeah.
And I think especially if you go to a relatively large employer, I know some of the sort of more bespoke engineering companies often don't have many apprenticeship programs, but the larger employers have 3 or 4 apprentices normally. And you get to meet them anyway, so you get to build that friendship group and build your network of young people. So I think like there's not really any major disadvantages. And when you finish, I mean, when I finish my degree this year, I'll have had sort of 8 years of experience and a degree. And I think
That's crazy.
it's impossible to compete with that as a graduate who's done a full-time degree. So I think
They might get 1 year's experience to do
exactly.
like a placement year.
Yeah.
But
If you look at the development as well, I know you're similar to me. Me and Jack are towards the end of our apprenticeship, but we're working on schemes and projects now that are pretty much at engineer level already because of the amount of development that you've had in such a short space of time that you're able to do that and provide benefit.
So it's the career exposure that it gives you doing an apprenticeship.
Exactly,
Brilliant, isn't it?
yeah.
It's a tripartite sort of agreement. It's a 3-way thing with an apprenticeship. The apprentice, employer, university. You know, if one of those doesn't run it very well, the whole thing could just fall apart. And, you know, some employers, perhaps they take apprentices on, they don't think about it properly, and it's not run very well. I'd like to think that doesn't happen at Waterman Aspen. We run pretty good apprenticeships, but that could happen. I've heard of it happening before, and that's a bit tricky sometimes. So you've got to be really careful who you go to, but otherwise they're a great thing.
Yeah. Esther, your background in recruitment, do you feel like attitudes have changed towards apprenticeships? Obviously, I think maybe in the past they've been a bit misunderstood, maybe not treated with the respect that they should have been. Do you think that things are changing now?
Yeah, definitely. I think there has been a switch because I think it was almost like the kudos of a university degree that you come out with. You know, you've been to university, you've done your 4 years or 5 if you're doing a placement, and then you come out and you're ready to start your working sort of career. And like you say, I think apprenticeships were perhaps looked at as possibly those that weren't as academically sort of biased, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that's totally changed. I mean, for me, if I see that somebody's worked on done a degree apprenticeship, that is a massive plus because of all the things that we've discussed there. You're not getting that in sort of a straight university graduate.
Yeah.
It's like you said, they haven't got that full range of experience. But it is nice to see attitudes changing because, you have got to be academically really sort of switched on to do these degree apprenticeships. And you've got to know your onions. It's not the poor sort of relation that I think perhaps it was looked upon in years when perhaps we were younger.
And you have the old YTS schemes. I mean, there's no taboo anymore surrounding apprenticeships. They're not like the old YTS schemes. They're proper full-on stuff. They are hard work as well because the apprentices, they're studying at university part-time, they're working part-time as well, and they've got all that going on, so they're juggling all of that, whereas you could argue if you did a full-time degree, you can concentrate your entire efforts on that. You don't have work to do as well and career. So I have heard apprenticeships are pretty full on, but if you've got the drive and the right mindset, shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Have either of you ever found it hard to balance work, studies, social life? Has it been quite a struggle to balance any of that with your apprenticeship?
I think throughout the 6 years that I've been at uni, or 5 years, I can't remember, it feels like so long. The only time that I've struggled to balance really is these sort of last few months because I've just bought a house. But
congratulations.
which needs so much work doing, needs renovating. It's like I've used all my engineering skills to buy this house. Well, apart from that, to be honest, I mean, we were having this discussion in the car when we were driving down. I actually don't personally find it all that hard, to be honest, to balance the sort of work, social life and university, to be honest. I find it fairly straightforward. But I do know a few peers on my course who've dropped out because they couldn't find the balance. Yeah. But I think it depends on how sort of naturally you pick up the stuff that you're learning and how relevant it is to your work as well. I think that probably has a major...
That's what I was kind of going to touch on there. It comes down a lot to the person as well. So you normally find the type of people that are coming into engineering or civil engineering as well that they're the type of people, what we were saying before about problem solving and things like that, and attentiveness and organisation. They're the type of people that are going into these apprenticeships. So they're not struggling as much because they know how to be pragmatic in what they're doing and associate their time well with the tasks that they need to do.
Yeah, they know what they've signed up for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what's ahead when no one's going into it blind. They know what's happening. It's set out fairly well to you by employers and the university, so you know what you're getting yourself in for. So you know whether you can organise yourself well. But like, obviously, it's not set out for everybody. You know, some people drop out, but that's inevitable in any kind of career.
People drop out at uni as well, to be fair. Some people, like I had friends that joined, like even me, to be fair, like I started doing film studies in my first year, and then I was like, I'm really just not enjoying it. I want like a bit of a change. So I changed to film and media production, which was way more practical and stuff. And yeah, people change it. People dropped out of uni. Even after like 2 years at uni, they were like, this is just not for me anymore. And they only had 1 or 2 years left. And they dropped out. I guess with that all being said, is there anything that you wish you knew when you were 18 years old? We'll start with you, Esther.
Yeah, sure. Oh, so much. I think, again, I mean, just talking now, it just seems like we've all had ideas of what we wanted to do as a career. And for some reason or another, that didn't happen. We didn't want to go down that route in the end. It didn't work out, whatever. And that was my thing as well. I wanted to be a journalist, and I did a work placement, and it was the worst few weeks of my life. So that went out the window fairly rapidly. But you do have that panic because it's like, you know, I'm at this crossroads and you almost feel like you've got to make this choice that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. But just like to reassure everybody and say that's not the case, you know. I mean, it is important, and if you know what you want to do, then that's fantastic. But there are routes to get back into what you want to do, like you've been talking about your own experiences there, Liam, and there are other options. There are more than one way to sort of get to where you want to be. So yeah, don't overly panic if things haven't gone exactly as you wanted them to.
Things change, don't they?
I wanted to do journalism as well, and I was shocked at I did a placement as well, and shocked at the way that journalists portrayed people.
Yes.
I didn't find it very a nice environment, to be honest.
I think that was the worst thing for me. I was just like, I cannot work in with these kind of people.
I didn't. It was when Princess Diana died, actually, that I changed my mind. I was like, oh, this isn't a very nice environment. People they're not very nice, and I just I decided, that's not for me, I don't think. I'm not ruthless enough, I don't think, for that. So
see, it all worked out. We're in civil engineering now. What can go wrong?
What can go wrong?
Like, it's okay to have a plan, and it's okay to not have a plan. It's okay if plans change. To be fair, I think that's with any age, really, isn't it? There's always time to...
It's true,
to change or to change employers or
That's a big thing. Everyone thinks that they've got to figure it out really early on, which isn't true. I mean, when I was 18, I was in the midst of doing my trade apprenticeship, and I didn't transfer into kind of an office environment until I was 23. A lot of people see it as being much later than what you should be, but you can do it at any age. I mean, there's people on our course at university that are doing the apprenticeship, and they're in the late 30s, early 40s as well, you know. So it doesn't really matter what kind of age it is that you decide to do it.
Okay, so what top tips would you give someone who is starting their first full-time job?
Their first full-time job. Top tips. Don't be late. Keep an open mind, basically. Give everything a try. I mean, civil engineering is so broad. And especially if you work for a larger company where there's opportunity to move around different areas of civil engineering, you know, just give something a try to start with. If you don't like it, you can shift and try something else. I mean, I did. I started off in building structures and then just shifted into bridges, really. And I enjoyed it more, to be honest with you. So, yeah, keep an open mind. Try different areas of civil engineering. Try a bit of site stuff, a bit of design stuff. Just see how you get on. You know, have the ability to move around as well. It's an international career, civil engineering. So move around the country, move around the world. Easier said than done in certain life situations. And if you don't have a family, etc., it's easy to do that. But yeah, I think those are my sort of be flexible as well. Those are my top tips there for your first post in the world of civil engineering, I suppose.
I would also say, like, don't forget as well that, like, you are also there to add value. I think people think, oh, I'm in my first full-time, and also sometimes other people in the business as well may treat you as, could potentially treat you a certain way. If it's like, oh, you're brand new and it's your first full-time job and you're just here to learn, you actually are there and you can add value. You're a fresh pair of eyes. You are there to add value. So yeah, absorb and take in as much as you can. But also, if you see something that you think could be improved or you have ideas, then don't be afraid to like use your voice.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think sort of building on that, just like you said, don't be afraid to ask questions either. That's, you know, just ask as many questions as the, you know, that come into your head. Your employer's not going to sort of be irritated by that. I think it just shows a great attitude. And like you say, you know, you have got something to sort of contribute. Because you have it, well, I mean, it depends, I guess, but, you know, if you have got limited experience in that particular field, it is all about your attitude, how you sort of present yourself, your sort of willingness to get on with things. And like you say, sort of your contribution as well. Don't hold back just because you feel like everybody else in the room's got so much more experience than you. You know, you have got something valuable to add to the conversation, and don't be afraid to sort of, let your voice be heard, really.
Yeah, if you don't like that area or type of civil engineering after a while, don't be afraid to move on and
Try something different.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of transferable skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't need to blag it if it's your first full-time job and you might not have as much experience as maybe other people in the office or anything like that. Like, that's okay. Like, just ask questions and
there'll be lots of people who actually maybe are not asking those questions that will be grateful you've asked those questions.
That's so true.
Because you didn't want to. Someone else has asked them and you've answered that question for them. So yeah, I think ask as much as you can really, and there's never a silly question, is there? No one's going to like penalise you for asking a question. So.
I think to your employer, it makes you look hungry as well. It makes you look like you're interested and that you want to get, you know, your teeth into this. You are going to make a real good go of it. So yeah, there's, you know, if anything, I'd see it as a positive. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So what advice would you give to someone to help combat career anxiety, so anxiety around where they're going with their life, whether it's the right path for them, just anxiety around starting their career. We'll start with you, Liam, if that's okay. What advice would you give?
Yeah, so probably the main thing would be kind of comparison is the thief of joy. So I suffer immensely with imposter syndrome a lot of the time, and LinkedIn in the onset of that has never really helped it much with anyone. And you see people putting all these amazing things on LinkedIn that they're doing all the time, which is great, and it is good that people are sharing them, but sometimes it can make you feel a bit inadequate about it.
Yeah.
But I think comparing yourself to other people is never going to be helpful in any respect. You just need to focus on what you're doing, and as long as you're happy with the performance that you're given for an employer and in your career development, then you need to be satisfied with that and don't make comparisons.
That's a really good tip, actually, isn't it? I think that's it is difficult to do that. It is difficult to not compare yourself. I think in all walks of life it is really difficult to not compare yourself to others, but yeah, you are you be you and just do your own thing, and I think that's the most important. And
I guess anxiety and nerves are completely normal.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can think that it's a bad thing, and a little bit is actually quite good because it sort of gives you that sort of kick. It means you want to do well. You know, it means it's something you're interested in. I think it's if it becomes overwhelming, then that's going to be a problem. And yeah, try and get as much support as you can then. But as we've touched on, you know, even if you find yourself that all your friends know what they want to do, or they're on a path and they seem like they're going down a really successful career route, and you feel like you're not, don't sort of worry too much. Just I think your mind can spiral a little bit at that point, and you think it's just me, it's only me. Whereas if you sort of take back a little bit of control, spend a bit of time just doing your research, finding out what it is that you actually are interested in, spend a bit of time on yourself and looking at yourself and what you want rather than what you feel like everybody else wants around you. That's key. Because there are so many options and there are so many roads, as we've spoken about.
Have you guys ever suffered from career anxiety? Has there been a point where, or have you been pretty chilled about the whole?
Yeah, I've been pretty chill about the whole thing, to be honest. I'm probably quite fortunate in that sense.
That's good. I'm the same, to be fair. I've never really had career anxiety. I never even had a plan, to be honest, which sounds really not very ambitious of me, but it's not that I lack ambition, it's just that I was just always thought, surely it'll figure itself out.
And I think it always does,
surely
doesn't
it'll be fine.
It does. I've kind of worried about things in the past. I worry that not getting caught out, but feeling like there's things that you should know. So if people are asking you questions and at the level you're at and the thing that you're working on, you feel like, oh, maybe I should know this. But I've kind of got the approach to it now that no one's trying to catch you out with anything. You know, everyone had to kind of learn something once.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you make a plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
How's that plan going?
It's going really well, actually.
That's good.
Yeah. Quite irritatingly, I wrote it when I was 18 when I just first started my apprenticeship, and one of the cleaners chucked it out just before I left. It was like 5 years later at a former employer. So I used to have it, and it would sort of get charted by 30, and I had loads of different steps. And everyone used to laugh at us about it, but it's going really well so far.
That's great, yeah. If that works for you, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that I've found really beneficial for like how my mind works is a friend of mine who's sort of a bit of a mentor, and he's a bit older than me. It said sort of either follow money or follow your passion. Don't try and sort of intertwine the two. He said if you're going to sort of follow a job that pays well, really focus on getting really good at it. Or if you want to follow something that you're really passionate about, ask yourself all the time, are you still enjoying it, or are you sort of just doing it because that's what you've always done? And that was something that sort of 2 or 3 years ago before I joined Waterman Aspen, I was sort of stuck with a little bit. I'd sort of been enjoying civil engineering, but I just got myself completely in a rut. I think that's probably the closest thing that I would feel I've ever experienced to sort of career anxiety. I think that's probably one of the only negatives about an apprenticeship, is you can sometimes feel a bit like hemmed into a certain company because you feel like you've sort of committed your sort of the late part of your childhood, sort of early adulthood, to one company. And I think for me, if I could like go back to sort of 20, however old I was at the time, and just say like, actually, you're not sort of, you just got to be loyal to yourself and like what your actual plan is. And I think having that plan and sort of the original goals was like super helpful in getting out of that little bit of a rut. And I think just not feeling sort of, I don't know, locked into somewhere, or I don't know, loyal to a manager, I guess, in some senses. I think because you can sort of separate the fact that everyone you work with should be your friend, but I think they also probably care about your best intentions. And sometimes it might be that you've got to have an awkward conversation and say, I don't think this company's sort of good for me anymore. I think I've sort of outstayed my welcome as such, and I need to move on. And I think always having that in the back of your mind can probably help prevent that bit of career anxiety. And I think, and don't be scared to move backwards from a sort of salary perspective or responsibility. I think you've got to sort of move in what direction works for you. And I think like you're only here once, so you might as well sort of enjoy what you're doing. And if you can make a lot of money while doing it, then happy days. But if not, I think you've got to just constantly like be happy with where you're going. And I think as long as you don't sort of dislike going to work in the morning, I mean, not like getting up early and having to commute and whatever, but I think once you're actually in the office, as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, or even just enjoying the people who you're with at work, I think that's like one of the main things for me that's probably like benched any sort of potential career anxiety.
It's massively important, isn't it? You're at work a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you spend more time at work with more. I probably spend more time with people with work than I do with my own girlfriend. And it's like, if you're not in a sort of happy environment at work, then that just translates to when you get home, and it's just like, you sort of got to weigh up like, what's the point at that point? So you might as well, I think for one thing, one piece of advice is just make sure you're happy with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and like, don't mould yourself to fit in with a company. The company, you and the company have to be a good fit for each other. Like when you go for interviews, or even if you get a job and you realise, I'm trying to, I don't know, like, don't change yourself to fit in with what, you know, the environment, or if you're not comfortable with the environment, if you're not comfortable with the people, and you feel like this, it's just not a good fit for you. It's not just about you fitting with the employer, it has to work for you as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And I think making sure like they're scratching your back as much as you're sort of killing yourself working late sometimes as well.
Yeah.
I know I was really sort of fell victim to that when I was younger. I used to like sort of stay late every Friday until about 8 o'clock and sort of work crazy hours just to try and sort of please the employer, when in reality no one else was actually doing that, and it was totally pointless. It's just something I'd fabricated in my own head that I thought was like a good idea. And I think like making sure like if that is how you work, that's like sort of remunerated or just appreciated, I think is really important. And like make sure that's being recognised, and that's something that Waterman Aspen I find like really important. And like all the direct managers and even sort of higher up folks in the company are always really good for recognising the hard work you put in.
Definitely.
And not to sort of make it a plug about Waterman Aspen, but I think like this is the only company I've worked at where like I actually feel appreciated. And I think that's like really important in your job, because it's like the only reason you should go to work is like feel good and make money. And if one of those is not right, then there's something seriously going wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that will sort of offset any anxiety
exactly.
or like imposter syndrome or anything like that. Because if you get, I mean, it's natural to get those feelings, you know. I think that is the natural human tendency, isn't it? And for, you know, some people get that worse than others. But, you know, if you've got a supportive sort of environment at work, a supportive team that you're working with, and they're there saying, no, you're doing great, you know, you're doing a good job, what do you need support with, what do you need help with, then that hopefully should, sort of allay any anxiety that you get, sort of put that to bed, and you feel like you can speak to them, I suppose, don't you?
Yeah. Definitely,
It's important, definitely.
Simon, as like a training manager or someone in training, like how do you, or how would you help? So, because I guess like another thing is people can go, if someone is worried, if you're at a company and you are worried, hopefully you should be able to go to your manager or go to someone to speak about it. How would you sort of help someone who is maybe struggling a bit with their direction of where they want to go, or even things like maybe you're afraid to ask for a promotion or you're afraid to raise those concerns? How would you, from sort of that perspective?
Well, that's interesting. Well, in terms of direction of where they want to go, I mean, that normally falls into the sort of professional qualification camp with me. So what I would do is I'd look at their current experience, I'd look at their academic base, look at the range of qualifications available over institutions and bodies for them, and then just say, well, look, I think these are probably a good fit for you. Why don't you start with something here, rather than shoot for here when you haven't got the career experience yet? You can't quite get that. That's a decade away or whatever. But in the next 18 to 24 months, you can go for this. And there's great bonuses in doing that. So that's how I would help someone with their sort of direction anxiety, as it were, when it comes to professional qualification. And usually works, usually does the trick. Once they get that, it gives them a real boost in morale and confidence. And then they've been through some sort of process linked with a professional qualification. They've then got the sort of ability and confidence to take it further, get the right career experience, and then push on to their ultimate goal, which is over here somewhere.
It validates their experience, doesn't it, as well? And that's a universal qualification that's recognised no matter what. And
whatever level you're aiming at. Totally. So that really, really helps people. It helps us as well at Waterman Aspen. It helps the company, it helps the individual, it upskills the entire profession over time. They're recognised internationally, as you say, Hayley. So it's win-win, really. I mean, I
guess it's not just about the end goal; it's about the step, the mini achievements that
totally
to get there, which is like you said, that's like a morale boost, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. And it can be daunting when you're starting off going for a professional qualification. You don't quite know how to attack it, what's required, how to write things. But we set people up with mentors. Everyone gets a mentor in some shape or form, which is a massive help. I think that's totally key to help that sort of decision process and where to start, and overcoming that anxiety as well about career and professional qualification.
Interesting.
Okay, so the future. What does the future of civil engineering look like? So, like, what are the latest technologies and innovations that people are considering this career might need to be excited about?
I think we're going digital here, big time, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's got to be. And that's changed so much from when I entered the industry in the late 1990s. I mean, it was digital. You had AutoCAD. I think it was version 14 I first used. Don't laugh.
What version is it on now? I don't even know.
We're a fair bit past that.
I've lost track.
1,000.
Wasn't that long ago. But it's super digital now, isn't it? It's going to be AI, it's drones, it's 3D stuff. It's very, very powerful. You're talking about digital buildings, virtual reality. I can see that accelerating over time as well. I mean, that's just quickly off the top of my head. It's those areas it's got to be, really, isn't it?
What about environment? We're talking about sort of things like net zero and, being aware of those kind of things. That's really important, isn't it, at the minute?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's a key thing, isn't it, in everybody's mind at the moment, the challenge of sort of climate control, net zero. How do we sort of achieve the milestones that we've set ourselves, the government set themselves? And it's great because civil and environmental engineers sort of lead the way on that. You know, they're looking at sort of ways that's actually going to make a difference, ways that we're going to do this. Electric vehicles, the infrastructure around electric vehicles. There's so much out there at the moment. There's a lot of digital tools that are involved with sort of calculating CO2 and all this kind of thing. So there's a lot of exciting sort of advancements happening there at the moment as well.
Yeah, I can see those advancements and technology going even further, you know, with buildings and infrastructure around you. So it becomes not carbon neutral, but carbon negative, if I've got the right term there, really. Throughout the whole life cycle of whatever it is you're designing, using, that's the way the industry's going as well. And, you know, technology, materials technology, digital technology is going to help with that hugely, without a doubt. Sustainability is big in civil engineering, really big. And all engineers and engineering technicians just completely switched their focus and drive towards that now. It's very important.
Is it a big part of your courses?
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, become more prevalent sort of later on in the degree as I do more advanced modules. But it's definitely, I mean, at the moment we're actually studying a module that involves learning how to use one-click LCA, which is a tool that looks at the life cycle assessment of a building and looks at its full carbon usage in both operation and construction throughout the entire sort of cradle to grave process. But the main thing that I'm really passionate about is AI. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I use it on a daily basis to check work, check drawings and things like that even. And I think going forward, the thing that I'm really passionate about is I think it'll be used to provide engineers with an idea of a best solution to a problem. So I think you could potentially be able to input data into the tool, and then it'll output the sort of best from a carbon perspective, from the sort of price per solution. Say, for example, it's reducing the number of collisions on a road, for example. And I think it'll be able to give engineers the best solution, because at the moment, the industry is still, in some regards, especially with things like cycle infrastructure and highway design, it's often a sort of a situation where you might do something temporary to establish whether it works or not, or potentially put a permanent scheme in before you can actually assess its use case, because you don't actually know how many cycles it's going to start using it and things.
Yeah.
And I think using AI and sort of big data might prevent wasted carbon, wasted funds from sort of being allocated towards schemes that maybe aren't as optimal as they could be. And I know, just even for like empowering sort of more junior staff, the ability to have an AI tool check your letters or check your emails before you then send it to a senior engineer to check, and sort of have the AI almost prevent you from having to blush because you've done a little typo somewhere that maybe says something that it shouldn't. I think it's really important, and that's something within my secondment that I sort of get all of the junior engineers to do, is sort of have a ask AI, ask Google, and then ask me. And then it just allows them to feel empowered, because actually, oh no, I've identified the solution myself, rather than having to just sort of be handheld by a more senior engineer.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I think it just saves time and ultimately cost, to be honest, as well. I think it's going to allow companies to operate much more efficiently, more cost effectively. And yeah, I personally at the moment can't see anything sort of slowing down on the AI front. I think it's going to keep sort of accelerating at the same rate that it is.
That's interesting. What about some of the sort of I don't know, like cleaner like methods, or going back to environment, like what about some of the cleaner like methods or materials that are being used in infrastructure today? Like where do we see that going, sort of like in the future?
It's going to change a lot as it goes. I mean, the environment has already changed the face of civil engineering. If you compare it to 100 years ago, there was never any consideration really given into how much damage there was, and just using materials on a as-when need basis and no consideration. But if you look at the materials aspect, especially now, and what academics are producing in terms of green concrete and low carbon concrete and things like that, and glass fibre reinforcement instead of steel, because it's a much more environmentally friendly material, that it's just going to exponentially go like that. I mean, it's much out of my realm, and it's much more intelligent people that are coming up with these kind of things. But yeah, I think touching on what Simon said, I think we will get to a point where it is going to be carbon negative in the kind of materials that we're using, and it's going to be waste from other areas that we can use already. And
just touching on the future, the people going into engineering, obviously there is a skills shortage, and the importance of STEM ambassadors and keeping the conversation going with young people about civil engineering is, it's really sort of key, isn't it? Like, I know a few of you are here as STEM ambassadors. What's sort of the main drivers behind you being a STEM ambassador, and what's the sort of things that you think are really important for the future of engineering?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the privilege of going into a number of schools in the southwest, and I've got to say, the first time I went in, I was astounded by just the passion that they've got, sort of, the hunger to learn about engineering. I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. So it's really great to see that the future's in sort of safe hands. But yeah, like you say, Hayley, you know, we need to encourage as many sort of different people that, you know, we can to sort of embrace these careers in engineering, because everybody brings something different to the table. You know, it was we're definitely starting to see more girls sort of come through, have that interest, but there's still room for improvement. So as a female myself, obviously that would be something nice to see. But again, I think, you know, the preconception maybe of civil engineering is that it was an industry, a male-dominated industry, and that's just not the case anymore. You know, there's lots there for everybody to sort of have their input into, and you know, there's lots of different aspects. You know, the harder side, the sort of civil construction, and then environmental. You know, there's lots of different things there that can take people's interests. So.
It's about having role models, isn't it? I think to look up to and to see and to identify with. And yeah, the more people go into schools, talk about that, into colleges, see those people in those industries, then
the more they hear, the more it sort of sinks in, and the more the word spreads, really. So it's really important for us to go out and speak to the students at these schools, and to be honest, it's a really good day out. I love it. So, I know. It's great though, because it sort of inspires you a little bit more. You know, you sort of think, you know, we are doing this for a reason. There's a bigger picture. You know, there's more going on than just what's in front of us on a daily basis. It just sort of enthuses you about the future again. So yeah, if anybody gets the opportunity to do it, I would wholeheartedly recommend.
Need more STEM ambassadors. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. It's been super interesting to hear about your experiences and your career and where we think the future's going, and hopefully, you know, hopefully some young people watching this will take something away from this and help them with their career decisions. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone at home who's joined us for the Engineer Exchange. Keep an eye out on our YouTube and Spotify channels for more content coming soon.
Thank you.